I sat alone in my car outside my parents' house on Christmas Eve night. Through frosted windows, I watched warm lights spill out and heard familiar laughter inside. In my back seat were 5 carefully chosen gifts. In my chest was a stubborn hope that this year would finally be different. For 8 years, I had silently carried this family, paying debts they never knew existed, solving crises they never saw coming. I believed my sacrifices would someday be recognized. Maybe just a genuine hug. I was terribly wrong. 3 days after that Christmas night, my phone held 23 voicemails. Every single one came from the same people who had called me a waste of space. Before we begin, drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from today. If you have ever felt invisible to the people you sacrificed everything for, hit that like button right now. And make sure you subscribe, because you are about to hear how one quiet man finally found his voice. I stepped out of my car and grabbed the shopping bags from the back seat. 5 gifts, each one chosen with care over the past 2 months. For my father Donald, I had found a premium tool set he had mentioned wanting last summer during one of our rare phone calls. For my mother Patricia, a silver bracelet with her name engraved on the inside. For my older brother Derek, a sports watch that tracked everything from heart rate to sleep patterns. For his wife Stephanie, a designer handbag from the brand she always talked about. And for my younger sister Megan, a brand new laptop because she kept complaining her old one was too slow for her freelance design work. I had spent over $4,000 on these gifts. But money was never the point. I just wanted them to see me. The smell of roasted turkey hit me the moment I opened the front door. The Christmas tree in the corner sparkled with lights we had used since I was a child. Everything looked perfect. Everything felt familiar. I smiled and called out that I was here. My mother glanced up from the kitchen, said hello without stopping what she was doing, then turned back to the stove. My father sat in his usual armchair, eyes fixed on the television. He gave me a small nod without looking away from the screen. In the living room, Derek and Stephanie occupied the large sofa with their 2 kids. Neither of them stood up to greet me. Megan sat in the corner, her face buried in her phone. She waved her hand lazily in my direction without lifting her eyes. I placed the gift bags near the tree and tried to start a conversation. I asked my father how his week had been. He grunted something about the weather being too cold. I asked my mother if she needed help in the kitchen. She said everything was under control. I walked over to Derek and asked about his construction business. He shrugged and said it was fine, then went back to talking to Stephanie about some renovation project they were planning for their house. I told myself they were just busy. The holidays were stressful. Things would get better once we sat down for dinner together. We gathered around the dining table and the food looked incredible. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, cranberry sauce, fresh bread rolls. My mother had outdone herself. For a moment, I felt grateful just to be there with everyone. Then Stephanie opened her mouth. She looked at me with a smile that did not reach her eyes and asked if there was anyone special in my life this year. Her tone made it clear she already knew the answer. Before I could respond, my mother sighed and told her not to bother asking because she had given up waiting a long time ago. Derek laughed and said I would probably be alone forever at this rate, and who would take care of me when I got old. I forced a smile and said I was focused on my career right now. My father cut in without looking up from his plate. He said my career was not a real career. Sitting in front of a computer all day was not real work. That was not what men in this family did. I swallowed hard and kept eating. I reminded myself these were just jokes. They did not mean anything by it. This was just how our family talked. After dinner, we moved to the living room for the gift exchange. I watched my family open the presents I had chosen with such care. My father unwrapped the tool set, looked at it briefly, then placed it on the floor beside him without a word. My mother held up the bracelet, said thank you in a flat voice, then set it on the coffee table. Derek examined the watch, frowned, and commented that this was not a real luxury brand. Stephanie took one look at the handbag and announced that the color was not her style. Megan pulled out the laptop, said okay, then went right back to scrolling on her old phone. Not one of them hugged me. Not one of them looked me in the eyes and said a genuine thank you. Meanwhile, Derek presented our parents with a handmade card and a promise to take them on a vacation next summer. Everyone knew he made that same promise every year and never followed through. But my father beamed with pride. My mother embraced Derek and told him he was so thoughtful and caring. I sat there watching, feeling something crack inside my chest. I had spent thousands of dollars and weeks of careful thought on these gifts. Derek had spent 10 minutes on a piece of paper and some empty words. Yet he was the golden sun, and I was invisible. The evening continued, and somehow it got worse. My Aunt Linda called on video chat to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. When the phone reached me, she asked cheerfully if I had found a nice girlfriend yet. Before I could answer, my mother grabbed the phone and told her not to waste her breath because I was still single, and it was honestly embarrassing to explain to relatives at this point. The whole room erupted in laughter. I tried to laugh along, but my face felt like it was on fire. Derek chimed in that my problem was simple. I made decent money but had no idea how to live. I just worked and worked like some kind of robot, and that was why no woman wanted to be around me. Stephanie nodded enthusiastically and added that having money meant nothing if you could not build a real life with it. She said I was probably too boring for anyone to tolerate for more than a few dates. My father had been drinking steadily throughout the evening, and the alcohol loosened his tongue even more than usual. He leaned forward in his chair and announced that Derek understood what it meant to be a real man. Derek had a wife, kids' responsibilities. He contributed to the family legacy. Then my father turned to look at me directly for the first time all night, and he asked what exactly I contributed. I tried to answer, but he kept talking. He said I was 34 years old living alone in some tiny apartment in Seattle. No wife, no children, nothing to show for my life. He said, I just sat at a computer doing whatever it was I did while Derek was out there building things with his hands. Then he said the words that would stay with me forever. He called me a waste of space. The room went quiet for a second. Then Derek broke the silence by laughing and saying that was harsh but not entirely wrong. My mother did not defend me. She just looked away. Stephanie smirked. Megan kept staring at her phone as if nothing had happened. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I looked around the room desperately, hoping someone would say something, anything to push back against what my father had just said. But no one did. To them, it was just another joke at my expense. Just another reminder of where I stood in this family. I stood up and said I needed to leave early. I had work to catch up on. Nobody tried to stop me. My mother just reminded me to drive safely. My father did not even look up. Derek gave me a half wave. Stephanie ignored me completely. Megan mumbled goodbye without taking her eyes off her screen. I walked out into the cold December night and got back in my car. I sat there for a long time staring at the house where I grew up, the house I had been secretly paying the mortgage on for the past 3 years, the same house that would be repossessed within 90 days if I stopped making those payments. I thought about the $45,000 business loan I had co-signed for Derek so he could expand his company. He did not even know I was his guarantor. He thought the bank had simply approved him on his own merit. Every month I paid the interest on that loan so he would never have to worry about it. I thought about Megan's apartment. She had told our parents she had a stable job and was doing fine financially. The truth was, I had been paying her $1,400 rent every single month for the past year because she could not afford it herself. I thought about the $32,000 I had given my parents over the past 5 years for various emergencies. Not 1 cent had ever been paid back. Not one word of thanks had ever been spoken. And tonight, after everything I had done, my own father had called me a waste of space. I drove back to my apartment in Seattle and did not sleep that night. I sat in the dark looking at my banking app, watching the automatic payments scheduled to go out at the end of the month. The mortgage, the loan interest, the rent, money flowing out of my account to people who did not even know it was coming from me. People who thought I contributed nothing. By morning, I had made a decision. I woke up on December 26th with a clarity I had not felt in years. For the first time, I saw the situation for exactly what it was. I was not a family member to these people. I was an invisible bank account. I was the safety net they never knew existed, the one that allowed them to live without consequences while looking down on me. I opened my laptop and got to work. First, I logged into my banking app and canceled the automatic monthly transfer of $2,300 that went toward my parents' mortgage. They had refinanced their home years ago when my father's construction business failed. He had pulled equity out of the house to try to save his company, but it had collapsed anyway. My mother had begged me to help, and I had quietly taken over the payments without telling my father because I knew his pride would never allow him to accept help from his younger son. But his pride had no problem calling me a waste of space. Second, I contacted the bank that held Derek's business loan. I informed them that I would no longer be covering the monthly interest payments as the guarantor. I explained that the primary borrower should be contacted directly for all future payment obligations. The bank representative confirmed they would reach out to Derek immediately. Third, I canceled the automatic payment for Megan's rent. She had been lying to everyone about having a steady income. She had been living off my money while laughing at jokes made at my expense. I did not send anyone a message explaining what I had done. I wanted them to figure it out themselves. On December 27th, the first cracks appeared. Megan texted me asking if I had sent her rent payment yet because her landlord was calling her about it. I did not reply. She texted again an hour later, sounding more worried. She said the landlord was threatening to start eviction proceedings if the payment was not received within 5 days. I put my phone on silent. That evening, Derek called. I let it go to voicemail. His message sounded casual, almost bored. He asked me to call him back when I got a chance because he had something to ask me about. On December 28th, everything fell apart for them. The bank called Derek in the morning to inform him that his monthly loan interest payment had not been processed. Derek was confused. He had never made those payments himself. The bank explained that his loan had a guarantor who had been covering the interest and that guarantor was me. The bank further explained that I had notified them I would no longer be providing this support, so Derek was now responsible for the full payment. I was not there to see his face, but I can imagine the shock. He had no idea I was the reason his loan was approved in the first place. He had bragged to everyone about how the bank recognized his business potential. The truth was, the bank had only approved him because I put my own credit on the line. Derek called me 6 times that day. I did not answer once. Meanwhile, my parents received an official notice from their bank warning them about a missed mortgage payment. My father called the bank to complain that there must be a mistake. That was when he learned the truth. For the past 3 years, their mortgage had been paid by someone else, by me. The son he had called a waste of space. My mother called me in tears. My father called me in confusion. Megan called me in panic. By the end of that day, my voicemail was full. That night, I sat on my couch and finally listened to the messages. There were 23 of them in total. The first 5 were from Derek. His tone shifted with each message. The first was curious and slightly annoyed. The second was concerned. By the 5th, he was frantic. He demanded to know why the bank was saying I was his guarantor. He insisted I call him back immediately. The next 5 were from Megan. She was crying in most of them. She begged me to explain what was happening. She said her landlord had given her 72 hours to pay or face eviction. She apologized for whatever she had done to upset me and pleaded with me to help her. Messages 11 through 15 were from my mother. Her voice trembled as she asked me why I had done this. She said she and my father might lose their home. She asked if I understood what that meant for them. Messages 16 through 18 were from my father. For the first time in my life, I heard something other than arrogance in his voice. He admitted he did not know I had been paying their mortgage. He said he needed to talk to me. He asked me to please call back. The last 5 messages were from everyone, each person leaving one final desperate plea. each one suddenly remembering how much they needed the brother and son they had dismissed just days before. I finished listening to all 23 messages. Then I turned off my phone, leaned back on my couch, and smiled for the first time in days. The next morning, December 29th, I agreed to meet my family at my parents' house. When I walked through the front door, the atmosphere was nothing like Christmas Eve. No laughter, no festive smells, just silence and tension. My father sat slumped in his chair, looking older than I had ever seen him. My mother's eyes were red and swollen from crying. Derek stood near the window, unable to stay still. Stephanie sat quietly on the sofa, her usual arrogance nowhere to be found. Megan huddled in the corner, clutching a tissue. I sat down calmly across from them and waited. My mother spoke first. She asked me why I had done this to them. I told her I had not done anything to them. I had simply stopped doing things for them. There was a difference. Then I told them everything. I explained how I'd been paying their mortgage for 3 years. I explained how I had guaranteed Derek's business loan and had been covering the interest every month. I explained how I had been paying Megan's rent because she lied about having a job. I listed the $32,000 in loans I had given my parents that were never repaid. I described the $4,000 I had spent on Christmas gifts that were mocked and dismissed. And then I asked them what I had received in return. I looked at my father and reminded him of what he had said on Christmas Eve. He called me a waste of space. He said I contributed nothing to this family. Yet I was the only reason his house still belonged to him. I looked at Derek and reminded him how he had laughed at me, called me a robot, said I did not know how to live. Yet without me, his business loan would never have been approved. I looked at Megan and reminded her how she had giggled when Stephanie said I was too boring for anyone to love. Yet she had been living in an apartment I paid for while contributing nothing herself. I looked at my mother and reminded her how she had told relatives I was an embarrassment. Yet she had come to me every time there was an emergency, and I had always said yes. The room was completely silent. I told them I would not continue supporting them the way I had before. Those days were over, but I was willing to give them one chance to make things right. I laid out my conditions. First, every dollar I had ever given or loaned to this family would be documented in writing with a clear repayment schedule. Second, I would continue helping with the mortgage for 6 more months to give my parents time to find an alternative solution. Third, Derek would take full responsibility for his own business loan going forward. Fourth, Megan had 60 days to find stable employment, or she would need to figure out her own living situation. Fifth, any support I provided from now on would be based on mutual respect, not obligation. I stood up and walked toward the door. Before leaving, I turned back and said one more thing. I told them I had spent my entire adult life trying to make them happy, trying to prove I was worthy of their love, trying to earn a place at the table, and all I got in return was ridicule and contempt. From that moment forward, I was done living for their approval. I was going to live for myself. Then I left. The weeks following that confrontation were strange for me. I had finally spoken my truth, finally stood up for myself, finally set boundaries that should have been set years ago. Part of me felt liberated. Another part still ached from the realization that my family had only valued me for my wallet. I threw myself into things I had neglected for years. I started going to the gym again, something I had abandoned because I was always too tired from worrying about everyone else's problems. I signed up for a cooking class I had wanted to try for ages. I started reading books again, something I loved as a young man, but had given up when my life became consumed by financial obligations to people who did not appreciate me. Slowly, I began to rebuild my sense of self. 2 weeks after our confrontation, my father called me. His voice was different, softer. He apologized for what he had said on Christmas Eve. He admitted he had no idea how much I'd been doing for the family all these years. He said he was ashamed of himself. I thanked him for calling and told him I needed time. A few days later, a letter arrived at my apartment. It was from my mother, handwritten, which was something she had not done in over 20 years. She wrote about how worried she had always been for me, but she admitted she had expressed that worry in the worst possible ways. She acknowledged that she had compared me unfairly to Derek and made me feel like a failure when I was anything but. I read the letter twice, then put it in a drawer. Derek reached out and asked to meet for coffee. When we sat down together, he was a different person. The arrogance was gone. He thanked me for co-signing his loan, something he genuinely had not known about until the bank called him. He apologized for all the times he had mocked me. He promised to follow the repayment schedule we had agreed upon. For the first time in our adult lives, my brother spoke to me like an equal. Megan found a job at a design firm. She called to tell me the news, and her voice sounded different too. More mature, more responsible. She thanked me for the push I had given her, even though it had terrified her at the time. She said she finally understood what it meant to stand on her own 2 feet. 3 months after Christmas, I sat on my balcony on a quiet morning drinking coffee and watching the city of Seattle wake up below me. I was alone, but I did not feel lonely. I had friends who cared about me. I had a career I was proud of. And most importantly, I had learned to respect myself. My relationship with my family was different now. We still talked, but the dynamic had changed. I helped when I could, but not at the expense of my own well-being. And, strangely, our relationships improved because of it. Perhaps it was because they finally saw me as a person instead of a resource. Perhaps it was because boundaries built on respect are stronger than chains built on obligation. I learned something important through all of this. Loving someone does not mean letting them mistreat you. Kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. And sometimes the only way to save a relationship is to let it almost fall apart so everyone can see what they truly stand to lose. I do not know what the future holds for me. Maybe someday I will meet the right person and start a family of my own. Maybe I will not. But that question no longer keeps me up at night. Because I finally understand that a person's worth is not measured by what they have. It is measured by who they are. And for the first time in my life, I am proud of who I am. If you stayed until the end, I want to ask you something. Have you ever given everything to people who never seemed to appreciate you? Have you ever felt invisible to the ones you loved most? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more than you know. If you are new here, subscribe so you do not miss the next story. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Sometimes the right words at the right time can change everything. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope you never let anyone make you feel like you are a waste of space, because you are not. You are worthy of respect, love, and everything good this life has to offer. Take care of yourself.